Loneliness is often a byproduct of living with any kind of chronic illness, and it can be quite hard to make others understand. People don't feel truly heard, and this is what I'm going to be diving a bit deep into today. These are the hidden costs that so many people deal with, struggle with when living with any kind of chronic condition, whether it's autoimmune disease or something else, but not it's not really talked about. And if you like what I have to say, make sure that you join our free Facebook group. It's a community where like minded women get together, women with autoimmune and other chronic conditions, and you get the support and the voice that you need. It's called Healing from Within with Anindita community, and I will be sharing the link with you. So, what I often find is that when my clients, and I work with women with autoimmune conditions, when my clients come to me, they are really frustrated that no one is really listening to them, right? They have been, sort of trying to share what they're going through with their family, with their friends. But honestly, if you haven't dealt with this situation yourself, it is really difficult to put yourself in someone else's shoe. And that's often very frustrating for so many people at so many levels. And it is so difficult to cope with so many of these conditions, which can be so debilitating, right? So whether, and if it's a particularly a very severe form of autoimmune conditions like a lupus or a fibromyalgia, or energy levels are, barely there. There's a constant pain that you have to live with. So many, and of course, I mean, there's a whole sort of spectrum on autoimmune conditions. And but the point is that it is hard to live with the pain of any kind of autoimmune condition, again, whether it's physical, emotional pain, or otherwise. And they feel sad that often even their doctors don't really listen to them. They don't really feel heard. And again, it's also about the system, because honestly, the medical system has evolved over years to be more tuned into acute conditions. So if you're dealing with an emergency, if you're dealing with any kind of viral infection diseases, so it's a jaundice or a malaria. So it's more has always it's developed from germ theory. So it's really more geared to deal with acute conditions, right, which needs immediate intervention. But chronic disease management is a completely different animal, and it's not really geared up to deal with that, which is why you don't get that kind of time with a doctor, right? They don't really have the time. They have to see so many patients in a day, because that's how always the system has worked. But that's a huge problem, because there are, a chronic disease, an autoimmune disease is a multifactorial, complex disease, right? Which is why you need to go into the history, you need to go into the symptoms, what happened, the timeline. So many elements have to be, dealt with. But that's not actually what happens when you go to visit a doctor, right? You just have a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes. We've been blessed to have an amazing team of dermatologists and pediatrician and other doctors for our daughter, who is the reason why I'm here today. She had severe health issues several years ago, and we've been to doctor. But the good thing in our case was that her doctors were really great, and they came together and they gave us the time that we needed. But that's not how it works for many people, really, in case of chronic conditions, in case of autoimmune conditions. And that's why they feel sad, because they don't really feel heard, right? Neither from the medical experts, and or maybe even from their family and friends, who can't really understand what they're going through. And the other thing and that's something that we have dealt with in our daughter's case. The other thing is that they feel limited. Their lives are actually limited because of their chronic disease, because of the autoimmune condition. And it really has, affects day-to-day life, right? So I know, in my daughter's case, she used to love water when she was younger, and that's something that she had to almost give up. So swimming is not really something that she was able to take up. Even when she was very young, she could. But the good thing is that she finally found something which is actually her passion, which is horse riding. So there are ways to work around that, but the fact remains that it is limiting, right? And I've had the same, another client who also could not continue with her swimming, and she was really good at it. because of her health condition, because of her skin issues. And she had to, accept that and then deal with her health condition and then resume. But it is something that limits can limit somebody's life, and that's what makes it so painful, right? In that way. So this is it's quite a painful experience in many ways. But what do you actually sort of want to, well, what do you want your life to look like? You want you to be seen, to be heard. You want, you would like people to really understand what you're trying to say, and maybe even to get time with your medical professional so that they really understand what you're going through and maybe help, and of course help you in that sense. And actually in this respect, some, you can do something about that, and I'm going to touch upon that in a bit. Maybe you want your life to not be so limited, not have to give up so many things in terms of diet, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of other choices, because there's so many restrictions that can come in, and it can really become very limiting. Life can really become very limiting. We've seen that in our own life. We've seen that in our I've seen that in my clients. So the way that I have always looked at it is that what am I getting in return, and why am I doing this? Why am I maybe asking my client to, and that's what I actually teach in my coaching, that, why are my clients giving up on, for example, gluten and dairy? Because what they're getting is is to be free of disease, or actually rather manage it, to be free of symptoms, to be free of pain. So many things that you're getting back in return, which is why you are trying to do this, right? So there are these trade-offs that often happen. It's hard to see why you would be doing the trade-off at that point in time, but the point is that it needs to be done, right? Yeah, it is frustrating, it is painful. You want to be free of the constant pain, and this is especially true in cases, again, cases of many kinds of autoimmune conditions, whether it's multiple sclerosis, whether it's lupus, whether it's fibromyalgia, and even if there is a, very high amount of inflammation going on, whether it's inflammatory bowel symptom or inflammatory bowel disease for that matter. There's a lot of stomach pain, joint pain, muscle pain, and I've had clients with all these kind of pain, and living with it every day can become so difficult, because that means that you're not able to do your work, you're not able to go to work, you're not able to. And I've had clients who've had to take days off work, they've had to give up so many things. So these are some of the things that don't really get talked about, right? And that's the reason I'm bringing it to the forefront today in today's session. And in fact, even the pain of not being heard is a very real pain, right? You feel that you're alone. And that's why I mentioned that loneliness is often a byproduct of living with any chronic condition, because the pain of not being heard, not being understood is extremely real for human. We are social animals. We need to be in community, we need to feel heard, we need to be we have a need to be understood. And when we don't get that, and especially from our own family and our immediate friends, etc., it becomes really painful in that sense. And in fact, clients often tell me that one of the best bits about the coaching program is that they have someone to talk to. They can talk to me, they can sort of feel heard, that somebody is truly listening to them. And many of the things that they may have been told that it's in their head, and or just take a pill for it, and that really doesn't work. Because often the doctors maybe don't have enough time to deal with all this, right? And they have not been trained to deal with all this, like to connect the dots from what's happening today to what was happening in the past, and why possibly this is the scenario. That training is unfortunately missing, because again, chronic disease management is a very different ballgame. So often my clients just feel better by being able to talk to somebody who takes out the time to listen to them. But I would also try to want to touch upon, it would, the whole thing would not be complete if I did not touch upon the reasons why this might be. This is my, of course, my own experience with my own daughter's health issues, plus what I've seen my clients basically go through. And if you stay till the end, I'm going to be talking about just one or two things, practical things that you can start today itself to change right? To change your way of thinking, to change your approach, and to possibly start doing something about this kind of a pain. So I've touched upon this, but I want to come back to this again. That it's the reason, one of the main reasons that this there is this disconnect. There is this issue where we don't feel heard, we don't feel seen, we don't feel understood, we don't get time to explain what's going on with our health. Is because again, conventional medicine is simply not geared to deal with chronic disease, because um, chronic disease, and in particular autoimmune diseases are growing exponentially, and it's in fact called the modern plague of the 21st century. So that's a quite recent phenomenon, and it's tied into our lifestyles, it's tied into the diets that we're consuming, which is far removed from what our bodies have been used to with millions of years of evolution. It is our lifestyle has changed drastically, especially in the last 50 years or so. And so has been our exposure to toxins, all kinds of chemicals in the everywhere around us, right? So there are these huge changes which have taken place. And in a previous video I did, I actually talked about this evolutionary mismatch. So I'm going to share that here, and that plays a key role here. Actually, I'm going to share that link below. So conventional medicine again is simply not geared up to deal with chronic disease the way it needs to be dealt with, right? You need to find a long-term solution, not just to put a band-aid on the wound and sort of just take a pill, because it doesn't work in chronic disease, right? The medications don't work. It just manages the pain, it manages the symptoms till it doesn't. And Of course there are many different side effects. So again, it's the kind of paradigm shift which needs to take place. It's happening, but not fast enough for many of us, right? So that's one of the key reasons. And health coaching as an industry is one of those areas of health and wellness industry which is sort of gearing up to change that, right? And I'm proud to be a part of that change. I'm proud to be a part of the functional medicine movement, which is actually based on the principles, similar principles of Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, which talks about root cause management, right? Root cause approach to chronic disease. And that's what we need to move towards. The other thing is that, obviously, again, coming back to that, the reason that often we feel lonely or we feel misunderstood or not really understood is because someone who is not going through this can't really understand what it is to live with a chronic illness, to live, to deal with it, to feel the pain on a day-to-day basis. It's really hard to understand, and I didn't understand till we used to have these sleepless nights because in eczema what happens is you're constantly itching, like you're so itchy that your wound, skin becomes raw at the worst of times. And even at other times when there's a flare up, it's just not able to stop the itching, no matter what you do. And what one of the problem with that is that you don't get enough sleep. You're not able to sleep. So when before I sort of embarked on this functional medicine journey, so we used to struggle with sleep at night. I mean, my daughter used to struggle. So as a family, we used to struggle to help her sleep. And only somebody who has been through this themselves, only say parents of children with eczema would be able to relate to that. I mean, I can't expect somebody else to really relate to what it means to have a truly sleepless night or a series of sleepless nights for months and possibly years, right? So somebody else won't be able to relate to that. So it becomes quite lonely. It becomes quite lonely, especially, and it becomes frustrating and disappointing if you expect other people to really understand. And the other thing is that no one is also really guiding most of the people who are dealing with an autoimmune or chronic disease as to why they are having this disease in the first place. The whole focus is on only on symptom management. It's only on dealing with the symptoms. It's only on giving them some symptomatic relief, which is good. It's a good starting point, and it needs to be done in many for many people so that they can start working towards a more long-term solution. But it's clearly not enough, and we have now enough research to show what is at play in an autoimmune condition in particular, and many of these chronic conditions, right, which is a mix of lifestyle, diet, stress, etc., and some environmental triggers. In the case of autoimmune conditions, there is a perfect storm which takes place. And in fact, I did a video about this. Yes, just recently, so I'm going to share that here, the link here. So we know enough about it, but this, unfortunately, this information is not being really made. It's being shared, but I don't think it's being shared enough, right? And that's why you may not have heard about the fact that there is a long-term solution, that you can do something by changing your lifestyle and your diet, and there are ways to do that. And and then you can make it easier on yourself to do that, right? It doesn't have to be really hard. So, because again, chronic disease progression is multifactorial, and that's why it becomes so difficult to manage them. And even what happens, I find that of even, and that's something from personal experience, even when you have the knowledge, it's clearly not enough. Because it is so hard to make changes and sustain them, just knowing what to do is not enough. You also need to know how to do them and how to sustain them. And last but not the least, another thing that I've noticed in my experience is that people often feel that there is no other way of dealing with their chronic illness, right? There is no other way out. They, of course, then they feel that there is no hope, and they need to live with it throughout their lives, right? That's quite a painful thing to accept, that there's no other way out, when in fact there is. And it's not about getting a cure for autoimmune conditions or other chronic, but it's more of obviously improving their health outcomes, right? Seeing a huge difference in their symptoms, in their pain, in their lives. Their lives literally transform, and it happens all the time. And I've seen that in my own life. I've seen that in my clients, where I have a client who started with not being able to go to work because of her health issues, not being able to, having very low self confidence, not sure whether she would be getting married or whether she would be able to continue with her work, to where she is today, where she is. Of course, she's started resume work in about 3 months when we started working with each other. She Her self confidence came back. Actually, she started wearing the clothes that she wanted to and feel good about them. And she found somebody that now she's married, and she became a health coach. So the whole life transformed. It's not just about that particular illness. So, what I want to offer to you today is that there are different ways to look at this, and you need to change the way you look at it. So, instead of focusing your energy on a lot of the external factors at play here, which is not really in your control, whether so in terms of whether other people will understand, support you, etc. I mean, of course, that's always going to be a part of what you need to deal with. But the bulk of your energy, you should be focusing on things that are in your control. So which means that starting to listen to your bodies and intuition. And you will find that as you continue to do that, you will start trusting yourself more and more to make the right decisions. Right? That's something that I can talk from personal experience. In general, in life, whether you are dealing with a health issue or not, that's true. So, as you start tuning into yourself, as you make space and time to listen to your body, it can make a huge difference to your life. And then, when you sort of, in that clarity that brings, is transformative, and that makes the difference. Your relationship with the world, with the people around you changes, right? Because then you can actually ask for what you want with clarity. And I'm going to share with you this my client's story. Shweta basically came to me with a whole host of health issues, chronic health conditions, and she started paying attention to her own body and making changes for the first time based on what her unique body needed. Not, she knew that there are certain things which did not suit her in terms of food, etc., but she was skeptical about being able to make those changes because in her words, she is a foodie, and she wasn't sure whether she could give up those foods, for example. But what she found is that when she started paying attention to her body and started listening and understood that those certain foods were not really serving her at that time, she did give them up over a period of time. In we make sure that it was easy for her and as simple for her to do so, and she became clearer on what she needed to give herself, what she needed to heal, and what she needed from others. As she became clearer on what her body needed, as she started trusting her own body and body's messages, as she started trusting her own instincts, it became much clearer for her to understand, what kind of help to seek, what kind of support, etc. This is what makes these changes, this journey more sustainable, right? Because again, dealing with a chronic disease, and even an autoimmune condition and I say it's a marathon and not a sprint, right? So you have to be prepared for the long journey, and you have to prepare your not only your body but your mind accordingly. And I'm going to read out what she had to say at the end of the 6 months that we worked together. She said, the best of coaching was making, apart from giving me an all-round understanding of my conditions, was making me understand and enhance my awareness to my body, physical and mental. It was almost as if I was deaf before the coaching, and now I could hear all kinds of sounds. I could figure out finally which sounds I could drown out and which ones I should pay close attention to, right? And this is often where we need to start. Rather than focusing on all the things that are not in our control, we need to take back power. We need to feel more empowered by listening to ourselves, by making the time and space to listen to ourselves. It's not going to happen automatically, especially not when you're going through maybe a health crisis, or dealing with any kind of complex autoimmune condition. But this is an integral part of the healing process. This is something that I teach my clients right from the beginning. And just one or two things that I want to leave with you today, which you can implement today itself, is that even if you are able to take out just few minutes, like just literally 5 minutes, and do some kind of reflective practice, that itself is a starting point. And do not underestimate the power of starting small. Right? Often, what happens is that because we get so limited because of our condition, because we are in constant pain, or we have so many things that we are struggling with, we underestimate the power of these small action steps. Right? Maybe we can't really take out like half an hour for an exercise, or suddenly start meditating because you're in constant pain, etc. But we forget that there are these small things that we can do today which can build up over a period of time, right? It's called compounding. So even if there is nothing else that you can do today, but take out 5 minutes for yourself, sit down, and in whichever form that appeals to you, whether it's in the form of listening to a guided meditation, maybe it's just deep breathing that you like doing, maybe it's a mindful walk, like just maybe walking for 5 to 10 minutes without any agenda, just paying attention to how the ground feels beneath your feet, preferably outdoors, preferably barefoot on grass. It's such a grounding experience. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling, first thing as you wake up in the morning, or even the last thing at night. These small rituals can really make a huge difference, because what happens is that when you make the space for this, when you make the time for this, you start listening to your body's messages, you start paying attention, and you start developing a connection, which then starts guiding you, which then tells you what is the next step that you need to take, right? So I hope that you liked what I had to say. These are some of the things that we discuss in the uh, our Facebook community, Healing from Within with Anindita. I've shared the link. Do join us. We do mindful Monday sessions where I take you through a guided meditation, just share some inspiration, some quotes, a book that I'm reading, and in general, just some resources, tools, etc., so that we can all support each other in this journey.